What is up, ladies and gentlemen? But most of all, you ladies out there, thanks for clicking on another episode of Break the Silence. I am your host, Cyborg. Are the Pelicans real contenders? Let's talk about it. Split cow! I am super pumped to talk a little NBA hoops today. We're going to break down a team that we haven't got to talk about on the channel yet in the New Orleans Pelicans. A super exciting young team, box office, must-watch NBA team, New Orleans Pelicans. And we got big news today that McCollum signed a 2-year, $64 million extension. What we're going to do is we're going to talk about McCollum a little bit. We're going to talk about the Pelicans in general, because I think that you're looking at a team that is really built up a very nice young core. And let's talk about their ceiling. Let's talk about their ceiling this year. Let's talk about their ceiling in 2 years. So let's get straight into it. First, please take a second to like and subscribe to the channel. You see we're about to hit 400 subs. We're going to do that before the season starts. The season's less than a month away. We're almost there, man. So we're pumped for NBA basketball. We got NFL on right now, but we're pumped for NBA basketball too. So like I said, please take a second to like and subscribe. Appreciate all the support. But let's break this down a little bit. McCollum, 2-year, $64 million contract, putting him on contract for the next 4 years for a total of $133 million. And those 2-year contract extension comes to about $32 million a year. In comparison, Damian Lillard in 2026 will be making $63.2 million. The reason that I really like this deal for the Pelicans is because the salary cap is about to jump. And that's what we see over time when we're talking about contracts. Sometimes they seem crazy. Like when you're looking at the NFL, Patrick Mahomes signed that 10-year, $500 million contract. And at the time, it seemed pretty wild. But 8 years from now, if he's still making $50 million, he'll be a middle-of-the-pack paid quarterback. And that's what you got to remember when you're talking about these contract extensions that are out a couple years. So the salary cap next year is going to jump about 8.4% in 2023. That's what the teams have been alerted, that the salary cap is going to jump about 8%. Which is a good number. That's a very good jump. And when you think about the fact that your star players get a majority of that 8%, this McCollum contract will not be bad for the Pelicans 3 years down the road. I think they're going to like this, especially because they got Zion in a pretty safe deal with some incentive-based stuff in his contract, and Brandon Ingram is not breaking their bank completely. So you got your core really build up, and then you got some really nice young players. So let's break it down a little bit. Next year, the roster, a lot of players that are going to play significant minutes. You're talking about a team that's very deep, and I'm really interested to see what their coach, Willie Green, does next year. I really like Willie Green as a coach. The Pelicans seemed like they had talent, but didn't seem like they were well coached. They were playing a weird brand of basketball and just couldn't figure out how to put the pieces together. The interesting part, and let's look at the contract first, because I want to talk about Zion a little bit. But next year, your rosters look like Brandon Ingram, Zion Williamson, McCollum, Jonas Valanciunas, Devontae Graham, Herb Jones, who I love, Jackson Hayes, Larry Nance, Jose Alvarado, Trey Murphy, Hernan Gomez, and their 8th overall pick, Dyson Daniels, that they just took in this year's draft. Now, admittedly, I talk more about the NBA. I don't watch a lot of college basketball. I stick to the NBA very intensely, so I don't know a lot about Dyson Daniels' games, but we're going to watch a lot of Pelicans basketball this year, so we're going to learn a lot about him. So let's talk about this for a second. Some of the strengths and weaknesses when you're looking at the Pelicans. You have a ton of young players, and you have a lot of guys that can do a lot of good things. Herb Jones last year really showed you a lot. Near the end of the season and in the playoffs, he is going to be an elite perimeter defender. You're going to have a great wing defender there. My guess would be you're going Brandon Ingram, Zion, Valanciunas, and then probably Alvarado with Herb Jones, Devontae Graham coming off the bench, and Larry Nance. So you got good depth. That's 10 or more guys deep that are going to be playing for this roster here. Now, the big question mark, I think, when you're looking at the Pelicans is point guard. Jose Alvarado is a very pesky defender, someone like a Patrick Beverley a little bit, maybe, a lot of similarities there. But is that the guy you want to be your primary ball handler, the guy who's making decisions for the team? Now, when we look at the playoffs last year, they took the Phoenix Suns to 6 games, as we all know. They made the play-in tournament as the 9 or 10 seed. I can't remember off the top of my head, but 9 or 10 seed, won both play-in games, and then took the Suns, who were the number 1 seed in the entire NBA, to 6 games. And that was highly impressive because at that time, Chris Paul, Devin Booker were playing very good basketball before they imploded kind of in the second round of the playoffs. But I'm giving the Pelicans real credit for coming out there and really competing in their first playoff experience. This was Brandon Ingram's first playoff games, and he averaged 27 points, 6.2 rebounds, and 6.2 assists. Now, here's something that we just talked about here. Do you have a primary ball handler, set the offense up, point guard kind of guy? The question mark is, can Brandon Ingram be that guy for this squad? In the playoffs, like I said, averaged 6.2 assists. He's a guy who, if you put him in a pick and roll situation, he's just an absolute weapon because he's so good at pull-up jumpers. So coming off a screen, if you don't come up, he can shoot that pull-up jumper. Plus, he's tall, so he's going to be able to pass. He's got really long arms, so he can kind of throw, passes around people, over the top of people. Brandon Ingram is an absolute weapon on offense. Now, when I talk about coaching and their struggles from the years past, I believe they had Van Gundy. I think it was Stan Van Gundy the year before Willie Green. And what the Pelicans tried to do a lot was play point Zion. Now, this was exciting basketball to watch. We all want to see Zion Williamson play basketball because he's an awesome, electric basketball player. He's athletic. He's box office. He's so strong. Smart, great young kid. We all love Zion Williamson. But he should not be playing point forward. He's not LeBron. He's not, those kind of, he's not in that class of guys that should be playing point forward. Zion Williamson should be the recipient of a great point guard. That's what we would love to see. So the question is, can the combination of CJ McCollum and Brandon Ingram facilitate your offense enough to, when you get in the half court, you can truly compete? Because the thing you got to remember about playoff basketball, in the regular season, the pace of the game is very fast. When you get in the playoffs and you know each other well and you're playing with a little more effort, the game slows down, meaning that there's a little more half-court offense. So having an effective half-court player is so important. You can have guys like Kevin Durant who are just elite shot makers to where he can get his own shot, hit that mid-range, and that could be really effective. Same with Steph Curry. Steph Curry, when you're talking about Steph and LeBron, their offense, like the whole offense revolves around them, to where Steph Curry, they're so concerned with him that he's able to get his other guys open. When they set a screen, Steph then ends up getting doubled, and then, it opens up the entire offense. So when you're talking about Steph and LeBron, that's kind of where they thrive. When you're talking about the Pelicans, though, can they be effective in that half-court offense? And what we saw in the playoffs last year against the Suns is that their pick-and-roll offense improved. In the regular season, they averaged about 0.9 points in the pick-and-roll. When we got to the playoffs, now 6 games, you might say pretty small sample size. That's what we got to look at. That's the sample size we have here, and what we're doing, we're projecting, obviously. So they averaged a little over 1 point per possession in the playoffs, which is very good in the pick and roll. The other thing the Pelicans like to do a lot is dump the ball down into the post to Jonas Valanciunas. So when you're thinking about the top post-up guys in the league and the guys who maybe run the most post-ups, you're thinking obviously Embiid, Jokic, players like that. What most of you probably don't know, the third most posted-up player last year was Jonas Valanciunas. He's okay at it, really not great. So you wonder, will they potentially go away from that? Can Zion and Jonas Valanciunas thrive together with the floor spacing? Has Zion been working on his jumper at all? Things of that nature. So what we want to see with this roster, this is one of those rosters that coaching is going to be so important. And Willie Green, like I said, a guy I really like, but is that something that we're concerned about at all? Zion averaged 27, 7.2, and 3.7 assists last time he was healthy. And Brandon Ingram averages 27, 6.2, and 6.2 assists. If those two and CJ McCollum are all right and all effective, that could be a very, very scary roster to play against. You're talking about a team that has a lot of weapons out there. You can't double Zion. You can't double Brandon Ingram when they have hot nights. CJ McCollum is a great number 3. I love CJ McCollum. And then you have Herb Jones as an elite defender. Now, defensively, I think is interesting. Brandon Ingram has the potential to be an excellent defensive player. He actually is a very good defensive player. We'll love to see him continue as he gets a little stronger. He gets, more understanding of the game. He'll improve on the defensive end of the floor. Zion Williamson is a bad defender. We need Zion to take that step forward as a defender for this team to take a step forward. We know what CJ McCollum is. He's really not going to be a great defensive player. But you got Jose Alvarado. You got Herb Jones. You got guys like that. And again, I don't know if this Dyson Daniels maybe adds some 3-and-D kind of aspect to the team or not. But Devontae Graham off the bench is a very good scorer. They have weapons everywhere. My guess would be that they start to go to a lineup of potentially a little smaller. You take Jonas Valanciunas maybe off the court and you start Larry Nance. Maybe you mess around with that, or you try to play Jonas Valanciunas and Zion at different times to where they're kind of coming in and out at different times. So a lot to look forward to with this roster. Now, what are my expectations for the season? I don't want to go too in depth to my official predictions because we'll release those here right before the season starts and all these moves are finalized. But I believe that this team has the potential to make the Western Conference Finals, which would be an awesome, awesome season for the New Orleans Pelicans. Now, the problem is you come into a season and every team is theoretically healthy. And you're talking about teams like the Clippers, Suns, Mavs, Warriors. Are the Lakers going to get better? I'm not a huge believer in the Lakers, but the Nuggets. There's a lot of teams that are theoretically getting healthy in the Western Conference. Can the Pelicans and the Grizzlies, but although Jaren Jackson's going to be hurt for a little while here, but could the Pelicans then, obviously health plays such a big part in all this, but if everything goes right for the Pelicans, could they make the Western Conference Finals? I truly believe that they could. Worst case scenario, obviously, is Zion continues to deal with injury, and they're kind of stuck with, a roster that's built around 3 guys, and one of them isn't playing that much. So that'll be what's interesting for the New Orleans Pelicans. My guess is that they're a team that competes for that 5-6 seed, which is a solid season. Again, you're talking about an NBA that there is talent everywhere. These teams are so good, and the experience is really going to matter when it comes to this season. Guys who have played together, chemistry, starting hot, finishing hot, things of that nature. So let's get hyped to watch this New Orleans Pelicans team, because I think we're looking at a squad that will be a lot of fun to watch, potentially one of the most box office teams in the NBA, even though I'm not a big fan of their jersey colors. Just feels kind of weird. But anyway, NBA's coming soon. Take a second to like and subscribe. Appreciate y'all watching. Cyborg out.